Hello everyone, I'm bringing you the Mannequin of the Month for June 2024 today. Obviously a little bit unusual as this is appearing mid-month rather than at the start of the month. I did post on the community tab. The reason for that, obviously I was at Duxford earlier in the month and I've made a video, I've uploaded a video dealing with the display there, working with the Airborne Assault Museum. A very good weekend, lots of interested people to talk to. Hopefully you've seen that video. Obviously we're carrying on the airborne theme, as you can probably tell, with the mannequin we're looking at here. Obviously the topic we're going to talk about here was chosen via a poll over on Patreon, as it normally is. The corporal tier over there get to vote on what's going to be covered each month. And it was quite fortuitous that I decided to delay Mannequin of the Month, as I actually picked up one of the items here at the start of the month at Duxford. So I was able to put this on the poll as one of the options. And it means that we're carrying on that airborne theme this month, which is quite nice really. So what we're talking about here is the kit of a member of the 6th Airlanding Brigade, part of the 6th Airborne, the British 6th Airborne Division. For air landing in Second World War terms means glider-borne essentially. So this is a glider-borne infantryman of one of the glider-borne infantry regiments forming part of 6th Airlanding Brigade, involved in Operation Varsity in 1945. Operation Varsity is quite interesting, obviously airborne assault across the Rhine in preparation for amphibious landings across the Rhine, amphibious operations to carry troops across the Rhine. The whys and wherefores and whether it was a worthwhile operation, whether it was really justified, it's a matter of debate now, historically speaking. There's a lot of sort of opinion flying around that it wasn't really necessary, and the heavy casualties incurred, unfortunately, were really not justified, shall we say. But it's a very interesting operation nonetheless, obviously involving both parachute troops and glider-borne air landing troops in a sort of the sort of role that airborne forces had really been intended for, not so much being used in a strategic role, but more in a tactical role. That is to say, landing just ahead of advancing troops to secure key points. And obviously this was the case. You had troops landing by air, by glider and by parachute ahead of the crossing of the Rhine. And that was the idea of Operation Varsity. And it worked. It's just whether or not it was necessary. It certainly did draw troops away from the Rhine, defending the Rhine. So there is that element, but whether it was really necessary and whether the casualties can be justified is now a point of debate, historically speaking. But it is an interesting operation. And we're looking at air landing troops here, as I say, not parachute troops. There are some differences in kit and so forth, which you see. Most of the kit you'll see on the mannequin here is basically bog standard infantry equipment. It's the 1937 pattern equipment set up in battle order, as you will see as we move this round. We obviously have the airborne elements of the uniform and the Denison smock here, and the airborne troop steel helmet, which we'll talk about more in just a moment. So, as I say, fairly typical airborne clothing, I guess you could say, or air landing troops clothing and equipment. Obviously the battle dress uniform would be worn underneath this, both the blouse, obviously wool shirt, trousers, and then the standard British Army ammo boots and anklets as well. So what we're looking at here on the mannequin is the web equipment and the airborne specific elements of the uniform. So starting at the top, as we normally do, we have here the helmet steel airborne troops in its basically its final iteration. This is to say it has the obviously doesn't have the rubber bumper around the rim of the helmet, and it now has the webbing chin strap attached in 3 points. You can perhaps see there's one screw here, one screw around here, and one at the back. And this is basically the final form of the helmet steel airborne troops, which was beginning to appear a little bit more commonly by the very end of the war, 1945. So you certainly see quite a few of these worn during Operation Varsity, alongside the second pattern, which still used the leather chin strap but had deleted the rubber bumper from around the edge of the rim of the helmet there. Obviously worn with a helmet net, as you can see here. Quite common to see these just with helmet nets, but also with scrim attached as well. There's a real variety in period photographs, so we just have the net here. Mentioning that detail there. At the neck, you can see we have a camouflage face veil worn as a scarf here. Obviously, as I say, designed as a camouflage face veil, but certainly amongst airborne troops, it was very common to see these worn as scarves. And we have that replicated here. And then we have the Denison smock, which, as mentioned, will be worn over battle dress. This is a second pattern, Denison smock, somewhat simplified from the first pattern, also introduces some features which were an improvement over the first pattern. We'll talk about that as we move this round. You can see from the front here, it is a second pattern. We have the simplified design of cuffs here. The knitted cuffs were removed, and you end up with this button tab system with buttons to adjust the cuff in, which just simplifies the manufacture slightly. Obviously, basically it's a wartime economy. The web equipment worn is 1937 pattern, as already mentioned, basically worn in standard battle order. So we have the two basic pouches around the front here. These are actually still Mark IIs. It was very common to see Mark IIs in use right the way through the end of the war. And we have the belt here, of course, and you can see here the haversack is carried on the back, and so the L straps are hooked in to the top of the pouches there, as you can see. We'll start moving this round now and have a look at some of the other details. Moving this round to look at the right hand side, you can see, first of all, on the steel helmet here, you can hopefully make out through the net, we have one of the screws here securing the chin strap. And this will feature in a video going forward at some point. We'll have a look at the details of the line of the chin strap and so forth in a bit more detail. You can see the straps coming over the shoulder here to support the haversack, carried up on the back there. Details of the Denison smock, you can see the epaulette coming down here. Details of the construction of the arm there, and obviously further detail of that cuff closure there. Just a simplification compared to the first pattern, deletes the knitted cuff, just a little bit more economical in terms of manufacture from that point of view. In terms of the web equipment, we can see basic pouch here, and behind it on the brace ends we have the water bottle in its carrier, in this instance a short sleeve type carrier, and obviously attached to the brace ends there, but carried quite close up to the body. As you can see, there isn't a huge amount of length left on the normal braces when worn by someone sort of similar stature to me, so the bottle ends up carried quite high up on the hip there, as you can see. Further down on the smock, you can see here at the side we have an adjustment tab, the bottom there, just to draw that in, keep it pulled in a little bit tighter around the hips, as you can see there. That's it for the right hand side. We'll move this round now to have a look at the back. Looking at the back here, you can see the haversack carried up on the shoulders here, relatively lightly loaded, which is common to see in photographs of airborne troops, both air landing and parachute troops involved in Operation Varsity. So carried on the back there, as you can see, sometimes also carried on the hips, it really depends. There are photographs of different units showing both ways of doing this, so I've chosen to have it up on the back here, just for the purpose of showing you on the mannequin. Down the bottom here, we can see a detail of the Denison smock. We have two female snaps or press studs here. Ordinarily, the tail would be buttoned up to these. In this instance, it's been removed from the smock, but this was an improvement on the first pattern in that you can now button it up out of the way, which previously it would hang down or had to be buttoned up, perhaps to one of the side adjusters, which wasn't ideal. It tended to just hang down and get in the way. So the fact you had this feature of being able to button it out of the way was a good improvement on the initial design, and something that will be carried through to post-war production of this pattern and then subsequent patterns of Denison smocks. So just an interesting change and a very sensible one there. Talking a little bit more about the webbing, you can see the braces coming down here to support the back of the belt, and obviously we'll see more detail of what's carried on the belt as we turn this around and have a look at the left-hand side. Looking at the left-hand side here, the smock is basically a mirror image. The sleeve is a mirror image of what we saw on the other side, as you can see. If we lift the arm out of the way here, we can see the bayonet for the rifle number 4, carried in a 1937 pattern frog. This is of a design which has been modified. It has a buttonhole in the top loop. Initially, these frogs were designed for the 1907 bayonet for the short magazine Lee Enfield rifle, the rifle number 1 Mark III Star. But these had to be modified. Initially, there was a leather tab introduced for carriage of the number 4 bayonet in its scabbard, and then a modification to the frog to add a buttonhole to the top loop, which meant this fitted in at the right sort of height in the frog and was nice and secure. So a modified version of the frog there, as you can see. And that's it for the left-hand side. So I hope you found it interesting looking at this. It's been nice to put this together. The piece I've picked up recently is the final pattern of helmet steel airborne troops, which we have here. I'm very pleased to have this. It is a post-war example, but nevertheless nice to have, and sets off the mannequin quite nicely. So we have the original Denison original helmet, much as both are post-war dated, still makes for a nice setup on the mannequin as we have here. I do hope you found it interesting looking at this. If you have and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you'd like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below. I would say a huge thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It really is greatly appreciated. Thank you all very much indeed. And of course, if you'd like the opportunity to vote on what's going to be covered in Mannequin of the Month each month, the Corporal tier on Patreon gives you that option. Obviously, the voting will be opening soon for Mannequin of the Month for July, which will be coming up in a couple of weeks' time, I think it is now. So, if you want to have a look at that, both of those are linked down in the description. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked in the description as well. And of course, there will be photographs of this posted up there as well, if you'd like to have a look at the stills, look at a bit more detail. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, but you don't use social media, there is of course an email address in the description as well. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.